Is this thing on?
Because it's far away, let's talk a little bit loud.
Alrighty.
A little bit loud.
Projection!
Hi guys, my name is Lewis Turner. Welcome back to my channel, Lewis Turner. Today I am joined with
Mariah Harrell.
Me and Mariah are in the same class in drama school together, and today we thought that we would review first year of acting and fight performance at East 15 Acting School. Now you're probably wondering why this video is taking so long to come out. It's basically because second year was so busy that we never got around to filming the first year video. So now actually we're going into our final year and we're finally getting the first video out. So don't worry, I will start catching up, but it might take some time. But without any further ado, I think it's about time we got into term one of acting and fight performance at East 15 Acting School.
So first we're going to go over our skills lessons, which are broken down in 4 lessons: voice, singing, articulation and movement.
In voice, we did autobiographical stories. The summer before we started first year, we got an email from our voice tutor instructing us to deliver our very own story from our lives, around 2-ish minutes long, which then over the term we would then refine and tune into our very own monologue, which we could then perform.
My autobiographical story was basically about me going to Germany as a competitive swimmer, and my host family took me and my teammate to a lake, which had like a bunch of like grass and seaweedy stuff in it, and I'm scared of seaweed. So it was essentially about the story of how I potentially drowned my host family's daughter. But yeah.
And my story was about a time when I was around 5, 6, 7 years old, and I was on a bouncy castle trying to impress a girl, and then ended up breaking my leg in the process. No one believed me. No one believed me that I was, in agony. They just thought I was being an imbecile. But I had to go to hospital in the end, and yeah, it was a good tale. The important thing with these autobiographical stories that we were doing is that you are truthful about them. That you're telling the truth, but you're telling it in a way that makes it fun and interesting, so that you can potentially use these monologues later on in your life, potentially for self-tapes.
Yeah.
And our teacher, Tara, would give us lots of different exercises. For example, the Walk the Line exercise from Cicely Berry. And these exercises would then help with vocal carry as well as
Vocal engagement.
vocal engagement.
Our next skills lesson would be singing, where we came in and essentially sang Happy Birthday for our teacher. In doing this, it kind of gave him a gauge of what we sounded like, and he was then able to kind of put us in our own little categories like bass, tenor, alto, soprano, baritone, and kind of gauge what kind of songs we would then kind of lead into, whether it was like pop or musical type songs. Unfortunately, we didn't have this teacher for long, as they were looking for a new head of music, and then got our hands on Kieran.
Kieran was arguably one of the greatest men who has walked the earth.
Yeah.
Clever, charismatic,
Yes.
hairy.
Fucking incredible.
I will actually insert a clip right here of the song that I did for Kieran in first term.
On the outside, always looking in, will I ever be more than I've always been? Kissing tapping on the glass. I'm breathing through a window, oh
That about wraps up singing, which brings us on to our next skills lesson, which was articulation. Was taught to us by our tutor and vocal coach Morag Stark, who is a really, really talented Scottish lady. Term 1 was all about basically discovering your home accent, figuring out what accent you have as a person, what that then says about you, and the different inflections you have compared to other people. I found out that my accent was a Southeast London accent with received pronunciation inflections.
And mine was a Northwest London accent with some St. Lucian inflections, I guess because of family background.
All of this then culminated in an assessment at the end of the term, which was basically us delivering a sort of 5-minute breakdown of everything we knew about our accents, where the influences were from, how it came to be, and all of that good old stuff. I found this very, very hard, and I'm actually quite glad we don't have to do that again, because it killed me. It really did.
Moving on to our final skills lesson, which was movement, taught by our movement teacher, Stephanie George. We did quite a lot of stuff. I mean, we started off with, getting used to physical touch, whether that starts from touching backs. I know it sounds weird, but
Yeah, like back to back.
yeah, back to back contact.
Feeling other people out,
Yeah,
having them fill you out in a not in a weird way,
yeah,
but in a way that allows you to find your own body and find out the way you move and what you can do.
yeah, and comfort with contact with other people. We also did Lecoq's 7 levels of tension. We also did this accompanied by music. So we would start off in an exhausted or catatonic state and build that up to, tragic and absolute chaos.
Mayhem.
Yeah.
I personally, during first term or first year with movement, had quite a tough time throwing myself into it. It took me until really second term of second year, before I actually finally found myself in movement. I know that is quite some time, but I do have problems with my body. I'm a very, very tight human. My hips they don't work. But Steph was very helpful with this, providing different stretches and different methods that we can use in order to, if we are feeling not very flexible, to improve that.
We also did a lot of massages.
And the massages that we received were so beneficial, because it meant that if we had just gone through a really, really tough week of combat, then it meant that we really could just rejuvenate ourselves and our peers could relieve the pressure from us, and we could do the same for them.
And I think we began doing also yoga, and I think that was generally helpful, kind of like calming down the excitement of getting on the course, and also preparing us to kind of be limber for the amount of combat that we were about to undertake.
So that's all of the skills lessons: voice, singing, articulation and movement, and I must say that they were very beneficial for us in first term of first year. Now bringing us on to acting. Acting in first term actually consisted of 2 separate acting classes. One was with our teacher called Biddy, and the other was with Adrian. With Biddy, we were doing this thing called Life Project, which was basically us playing ourselves throughout different stages of our life, and this would consist of doing weekly improvs. Before we began these improvs, we actually wrote down and gave a speech to our class about what we want with our lives, where we want to be in the future, and everything we want to achieve. And then from the following week onwards, the improvs would commence. Our very first improv we did was us at around 5, 6, 7 years old, which was us just being us as kids, running around having a party. Following week, we were then our 15, 16-year-old selves, then our current selves, and then this would then progress for about 3 or 4 more weeks until we were eventually 80 years old. And we then filmed a video of us looking back at our lives and everything we had done. It was both beautiful and also quite unsettling. Obviously, playing yourself at 15 is already jarring enough. And then having to think about yourself at the age of 80 when everyone you've loved has died. Traumatic, but traumatic in a good way, because it really allowed you to be yourself, but be yourself in a way that you have never been before. I reckon actually it probably was quite helpful with us growing up in general.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely enjoyed Life Project. I mean, I was a pregnant 30-year-old who lived in a sisterhood.
I actually ended up playing a mushroom farmer for soldiers in the war recovering from PTSD. And obviously that's not where I see my life going at all. But then again, no one knows where their life's going to go. So realistically, maybe I am going to be a mushroom farmer. We don't know that.
And then we move on to the other half of acting, which was object exercise with Adrian James, or should I say Dr. Adrian James. Object exercise consisted of multiple exercises, including a timed exercise, untimed exercise, inner obstacle, outer obstacle, and we also did life and death. These all kind of contributed to the way that we handle objects in acting and how they relate to us, as well as our feelings towards other people and vice versa.
And replicating truth in a staged scenario.
Yes, I think that was the point of it. I think that was the point of it. And I fucking pulled shit out of my ass.
How we handle objects.
So in terms of the timed exercise, I think that was probably one of my favourite ones. We would come up with 3 obstacles. I did getting changed, doing my hair, and wrapping a present. Adrian gave me about maybe 2.5 minutes to do all of that, and whilst being under pressure with time, we had to still find the truth in the exercise.
And the really fun thing about Mariah's object exercise was that she was able to complete the entire thing in the exact time limit, but as soon as she ran out of the room to open the door, the timer went off instantly, and she didn't make it out of the room in time. She was this close, and then she ran, and the timer just went off. And it was so exciting to watch, because everybody was on the edge of their seats just knowing that she had like 3 seconds left and she was still putting her bag on. It was horrific to watch.
Life and Death was one that I observed so intently. I didn't get to do it, unfortunately. But watching our classmates had to get out of a life or death situation where somebody would play, say for example, a killer who is sitting on a chair asleep, and you have to do the utmost escape from glass bottles like scattered around and all these things basically set up for failure, and try and get out of the room without the killer waking up.
Whilst you're blindfolded.
Whilst you are blindfolded.
And I'm pretty sure that the object exercise process was actually created by Uta Hagen. She's got an amazing book, it's called Respect for Acting, and I actually ended up reviewing that later on in the year. We'll get to that later on. But that book, I think, is honestly really, really beneficial. And I think if you want to learn more about object exercise, definitely read Respect for Acting by Uta Hagen. Because we're running out of time for term 1, I think we're going to combine anatomy and physiology with martial arts and GAT. In anatomy and physiology, we basically learn about anatomy and physiology, and we would just have regular sessions with this dude called Lewis, who would teach us about the body and its mechanics and how to look after it when you're working it very, very hard. This all then culminated in an assessment where we had to create our own warm-up and cool-down, and that's about that really. In martial arts, we had Rajesh, and we were basically taught Kali, which is a Filipino stick fighting. And that was fun, and we learnt a lot. Martial arts is also very beneficial because it allows you to learn the actual martial logic behind all of the fighting that you're going to be doing in all of the combat lessons, which is always beneficial and always a great way to learn actual moves that you could then throw into some of the choreography that you're doing.
And then finally we have GAT, which stands for Gymnastics, Acro and Tumbling. Our teacher was Luke Jones, amazing acrobat. We would basically learn the foundations of gymnastics. So say for example, we would do a bunch of forward rolls and cartwheels. Very beneficial for the entirety of the class, whether you have experience in gymnastics before or whether you've never done gymnastics before. So, you know, I mean, that's basically...
That is literally us. I've done nothing, and Mariah is
I've
the
done
best
about
gymnast
9
in the
years of
class.
gymnastics before.
So yeah.
It's one of my, it was actually one of my favourite classes, and not obviously because I've done it before, but watching my entire class do something that I've grown up doing and loving was absolutely incredible. And, you know, watching everybody get stuck in and gain new skills was just like the utmost atmosphere to be in.
And it really allowed you to work at your own pace as well. Like Mariah would be in a corner doing backflips and I'd be in a corner trying to learn how to do a forward roll. I didn't actually learn to do a forward roll, I learned to do an Aikido roll, which I think is better
It looks
than
so
a
much
forward
cooler.
roll. It just looks so much cooler, and
Yeah.
you can slot it into any form of combat whatsoever and it will look sick. Our teacher, Luke, was actually really, really helpful, and if it wasn't for him, I might have not made it through the course, because he was actually really helpful with me not feeling like a failure because I hadn't done any gymnastics before. Before we finally talk about the big magnum opus that is why you're all here in the first place, the fight performance, we're just going to talk about one last thing, which is context.
In context, it's more of a lecture lesson. Now, I say lecture in quotation marks because, you know, we don't have many of those at all. We were able to sit down and kind of talk about and learn about Greek and Shakespearean theatre.
This meant that we would then read plays such as Antigone, which is a classic Greek play, as well as Hamlet, which is obviously maybe Shakespeare's most famous play.
I quite enjoyed context, but I think because I did drama A-levels and we did Shakespearean theatre, Greek theatre, a lot of it overlinked with stuff that I had already learned previously the year, quite literally before. It's always a pleasure learning stuff like that because you can always go over stuff that you've learned and learn things that you haven't learned on that topic. So I do think that it was helpful.
And yeah, I think that's quite a difference between me and Mariah, because Mariah did drama A-level, whereas I did a diploma in a college, like an actual theatre doing acting. So we never learned about any of the actual history behind any of the stuff we did. If you're going to be coming here from a college course, maybe potentially the Miskin Theatre, which I know a lot of people go to East 15 from Miskin, then you might not have learned a lot about Greek theatre, but maybe if you are coming from an A-level course, then you will definitely have learnt about it already before. So I guess it's just depending on your background. And now the one you've all been waiting for, drum roll. Combat! Now obviously the whole reason why you're going to be wanting to join this course, or why you have been offered the course in the first place, is because you're interested in fight performance, or as it was called when we started, stage combat. The whole first term of your training in combat is essentially just building up the foundation of skills that you can then build upon later on in your training. But the weapon systems that we learned for first term was rapier and dagger, as well as then unarmed, which is just your fists. And at the end of first term, while we didn't have a set assessment yet, because you actually learn rapier and dagger and unarmed for a term and a half, so you end up doing the assessment in the second half of term 2, we still did have a little mini mock assessment before Christmas, which is basically about 6-7 moves of choreography with a few lines of dialogue in front of only the second and third year combats who have been in that
Same situation.
And for those of you wondering what rapier and dagger actually is, it's a really big, thin sword, really thin, so it's really light, you can swish it around, and then in this hand you've got a dagger. But that was actually something really interesting, was that you learned it the other way around, didn't you?
Yes, yeah, I did.
So while I would be using the sword on my right hand and the dagger in my left hand,
I would be having my rapier in my left hand and my dagger in my right hand.
Because you're left-handed.
I am left-handed, which was actually really interesting with working with the majority of the class who were right-handed people, was that the choreography would change. So everybody else, being right-handed in the class, would learn the same choreo, and then I would have to learn that same choreography and then put my hand up to then get it reversed. So every single time that I would work with somebody else in the class, because we would rotate, I would then have to end up teaching them a different part of the choreo, which would be very trippy for everybody.
It wouldn't ever be anything crazy that would then like change the course of history, but it would be enough that like it would change the outcome of a few moves.
Yeah, no, it would be a massive mindfuck.
Yeah. Look at us go. And that's first term complete, which brings us on to second term. Just to get them thrown out of the way, because they were pretty much the exact same as they were in first term, we're going to talk about movement, martial arts and GAT. Movement, once again, Stephanie George, great teacher, and we learnt movement.
Martial arts, again with Rajesh, we were doing disarms with Carly and maybe possibly takedowns as well at that point.
And then once again in GAT, we were just consistently refining our skills we learnt from first term, as well as adding new ones, such as scoots and macaques. Anatomy and physiology was also basically the exact same, except this time we had a different teacher and our lessons were practical based instead of sitting on a Zoom call. These lessons were basically just 2-hour-long workouts. Each week we would have a different workout, and it was quite fun. A way to keep all of these workouts fresh would be that each week a different pair in the class would devise their own workout and lead the class through their workout. We're now going to talk a little bit about our acting in second term. Our acting teacher this term was called Michael Grady Hall, who was an external tutor who had come in to teach us. Here we basically learn about character research and the process that one has to undertake in order to fully embody a character. And we started off with monologues.
My monologue was a monologue from Vera 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 by Hayley Squires, and I did the Charlie monologue.
And I did a monologue from a play called Immaculate, and my monologue character was Lucifer. After we then delivered these monologues, he would hot seat us, so the entire class would then contribute, asking us lots of different questions. If you don't know what hot seating is, it's basically you staying in character the whole time whilst lots of people ask you different questions about yourself, and you have to answer in character, and it helps you to learn more about your character in an improvised way. From that moment on, we were then given a different play every other week and a different character from that play. And we would then have to come in dressed as that character and then fully body them in a hot seating manner. I ended up being a character from a play called History Boys, and if any of you know anything about that play, then the character who was the teacher, a complex character. But I had fun and I learned a lot, and Michael Grady Hall was a great dude.
Moving on to term 2 articulation, where we learned about standard English accents, and then this culminated to an assessment where we had to prepare a set text.
I did a set text from The Hobbit.
And I did set text from Arthur the Rat.
Some people in the class found this harder than others. Well, me and Mariah are both from London, so we've been surrounded by standard English accents pretty much our entire lives. We have lots and lots of different people from different countries in our class. People from Liechtenstein, Poland, Germany, everywhere. But for us, it was easy, so that was okay. Now finally on to second term voice. This term we did poems. I can't lie to you, I absolutely hated the poem that I chose to do this term. It was a very sexual poem about wine and cheese. I don't know why I chose to do it. I just thought maybe it could be fun. And then was it fun? I didn't have fun, no. But the great thing about this process was that actually if you wanted to, you could write your own poem. A guy in our class called Jaden actually wrote his own poem, and it was pretty brilliant. He wrote a really great poem. And once again, our tutor would then help us with our voices throughout this process, helping us how to best deliver a poem and all the different methods and techniques one can use to really engage somebody in the poem that you're telling them. One of the exercises we did was actually the stacked chair exercise, where you would stack chairs consistently, and because you'd be repeating this task, it was then sort of a metaphor for repeating words in the poem. If something is repeated, then you want to say it in as many different ways as you possibly can, because each different time can tell a different story. Mariah is now going to tell us a little bit about folk songs.
Folk songs. So in term 2 for singing, we got a bunch of folk songs and we learnt them all. And then we got tasked to create our own lyrics to one of the tunes of the folk song and then present it in an assessment to the class.
Or if you were me and my group, we ended up creating a folk song to the melody of Misty Mountains from The Hobbit. Honestly, I wasn't a huge fan of this process. I did enjoy the folk songs that we had learnt in class, but writing our own one, I didn't see the benefit in doing it, and I don't think I learnt a whole lot from doing it.
In my mind, I just felt like everything had to rhyme. So I feel like I wasn't really, not necessarily songwriting, but I felt like I was just kind of looking for the next word to rhyme with the previous word.
If this term instead had been on songwriting as a whole, that could have been a lot more fun and maybe a lot more interesting. But once again, Kieran was an absolute gem of a teacher and made the whole process just bearable. Moving on to second term context. As we said before during first term, we were doing Shakespearean theatre and ancient Greek theatre. And this carried on into this term, except this time we were then tasked to create a presentation about the similarities and differences between these two types of theatre on one specific topic. Me and my group decided to do a presentation on gender identity and the different politics with that between Shakespearean and ancient Greek theatre. And I must say I was really happy with the work that me and my group did for that, and we sort of filmed the debate, and this debate we were really happy with how it came out, even though the audio quality was not very nice at all.
I think me and my group did our presentation based on the actual physical differences and similarities of the theatre. So say for example, we compared the Shakespeare Globe to an ancient Greek theatre.
This then brings us once again to combat, where we finally actually got to do our assessments for unarmed and rapier and dagger. My unarmed partner was Grace, and we did a scene from Prisoners, and my rapier and dagger partner was Mariah, and we did a scene from The Last Days of Don Juan.
Yes.
The Last Days of Don Juan. I played Don Juan, and you were Don Anna? I think it was Don Anna. I think it was Don Anna.
Maybe it was just Anna.
I think it was Don Anna.
Maybe it was just Anna.
But the fun thing with that assessment was that the two different scenes that I did were very contrasting to one another, which is always good. For example, I know a lot of you, when you're doing self-tapes for drama school, you do two different monologues that are very that contrast. You might do a comedy one and then a tragic one. And this was very much the same with these two scenes I did. The scene from Prisoners, if any of you have seen the film, it's not an easy watch. Whereas The Last Days of Don Juan is hilarious. And while it was only our first ever combat performance, so the combat in the assessments wasn't exactly like fantastic, I think the scene that we did for Don Juan was quite fun, and the audience did really like it, which was nice.
For Unarmed, I was partnered with Kyle, and we did a scene from Travellers, but because we wanted it to be kind of special, we kind of picked parts of the show and then kind of wrote the scene ourselves, if that kind of makes any sense. And again, like Lewis said, it was a contrasting scene from The Last Days of Don Juan. I found it quite difficult. We've learned all this combat, and then we had to then devise a piece by ourselves and then put it and fit it with a scene. With the devising period, you could think that you have the best bit of combat, and then it comes to priority week where you have to then start doing it, and then you're like, oh my god, but I want to put this in it, and I want to put that in it. And then all of your previous ideas might just go flying out the window, so nothing is ever really set in stone.
You end up looking at a lot of other people's combat,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh fuck, theirs is so good. But the lucky thing is that everyone else is thinking that about yours as well. It all balances out in the end, and you end up all just being very, very proud of one another. Thankfully as well though, the whole devising choreography is only for the unarmed aspect. For the rapier and dagger, you actually get given choreography. You get given 5 phrases, we call them, of choreography, and you then pick 3 of them, or you can pick more if you want, but most people just pick 3, and then you end up putting that into the scene that you have been given. But overall, I was very, very happy with The Last Days of Don Juan. Not as much with my other scene. That was because Unarmed was not a strong point of mine at that moment in time. I think since then, it has definitely gone way better. Also, because this assessment was only halfway through the term, this then meant that we had another 5-6 weeks left, which meant we could then begin working on our new weapon systems, which was broadsword and
Quarterstaff.
you might be wondering, what the hell's a quarterstaff? A quarterstaff is a massive 6 feet long stick which you swing at each other and cause damage with, really. And then a broadsword is a big 2-handed sword which you can then just use at your own will.
And actually, fun fact, I then became right-handed. So nobody had to do left-handed choreo.
Why did you have to become right-handed?
Well, I personally thought, I thought that it would be a lot easier for the rest of the class if I was just right-handed. And actually, in turn, it definitely helped me then become ambidextrous.
And that was combat! Moving on to a little subsection of combat, if you will. At the end of our second term, we actually spent an entire week with the third years. When you're a third year, one of the assessments that you have is taking the first years under your wing and actually teaching them combat yourselves. As a third year, you're being marked on your own choreography skills.
Yes.
Finally, after 3 years of culmination. You give them a scene, it's normally a scene from Shakespeare, and you then teach them lots and lots of phrases of combat, which they then learn, put into the scene, and hopefully do a good job at it. And if they do a good job, hopefully it's because you taught them very, very well. This happened for us. We were taken under the wings of the third year combats, and I ended up doing 2 scenes. I did a scene from Romeo and Juliet, as well as a scene from Twelfth Night.
And I did a scene from Hamlet.
The third years that were instructing us were so helpful, and everything they taught us was really beneficial. And it was so interesting to see how far we had come in only a matter of weeks from learning rapier and dagger to then doing rapier and dagger again, but this time with the third years, and it's somehow being 10 times better than our abilities 6 weeks prior. I don't know if it was the same for you.
100% agree. I feel like maybe because there wasn't the pressure of our own assessment potentially.
Because we weren't being assessed.
We weren't
on
being
this.
assessed, it was the third years. And I feel like I had so much pressure to do it right when we were doing The Last Days of Don Juan, that when I went to do Hamlet with the choreography from the third years, I felt like I had been doing rapier and dagger for ages.
It was weird because we went into the armory and took out the rapier and daggers, and I was like, hello old friend. And it had been a few weeks. And now, this brings us to Commedia. Commedia dell'arte is a form of comedy theatre from Italy from hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And it's basically improv based with lots of different colourful characters and creations of your own. And a lot of the time you end up wearing these masks which cover your face, and you have these really massive facial expressions on them. The characters in Commedia dell'arte consist of Zanni,
Younger lovers, older lovers,
the captain,
Pantalone.
Harlequin. In my most humble and honest of opinions, Commedia was one of the worst things I've been a part of in my entire life. Not only was it mentally draining and physically exhausting, but I don't think I gained a whole lot from it. Sure, now I know a lot about Commedia, and I definitely have a respect for the people who do it and who are good at it. I do think I was alright at it, and I did end up getting quite a good mark, but the only problem was the amount of mental toll it takes you to get to that point wasn't fun, and it actually hurt my knees.
It really pushes you out of your comfort zone. Like, if you feel like you're comfortable, it will push you beyond that. I definitely think that it is an acquired taste. I mean, you could love to do comedy, but I feel like even if you love doing comedy, Commedia dell'arte pushes you in a direction where you just feel so bleh.
I do sometimes wish that I had pushed myself further in Commedia, but also I think if I had have done, maybe I wouldn't be sat here today. You know your limits, but also when you are willing, push yourself past them. But if that pushing that you past them is going to kill you, maybe just don't do it, you know what I mean?
And I think what I did take away from it is finding the energy that I need for different types of characters throughout the training. If I need to think about the energy for a character, I can definitely go back to Commedia and think about it from that kind of an aspect.
One thing that I am grateful for though with Commedia is that it did result in the creation of one of my all-time favourite characters, Pelvis Esley, who is an obvious play on Elvis Presley, and I discovered that I can actually do an okay Elvis impression, and maybe one day I might actually start my own tribute group. This finally brings us to the last term of the year, term 3. And once again, we're just going to quickly rattle off the lessons that were basically the exact same, which was anatomy and physiology, movement, martial arts, GAT, and context. Anatomy and physiology was once again the exact same. We were continuing the process of different people delivering different workouts to us, except this time at the end of the term, we actually had to create our own fitness and diet plan for somebody in our class. We would assess their needs and then create a plan for them.
Again, in movement, we refined our skills with contact, delve a little bit more into intimacy coordination, where we would have, text and script, and then kind of implement our own movements in those where we would see fit. And we would also continue on with the states of being, going from maybe a little amoeba into a massive grizzly bear.
Martial arts was once again the exact same, except this time we actually ended up devising some of our own choreography with what we had learnt in Kali, and that was quite fun. GAT was also the exact same, once again refining our skills. I learnt to do some more things. I ended up doing a sort of flip off a trumpet, which was kind of fun. Didn't land on my feet, but it's okay. And also, just to get it out of the way, we had special lessons this term on health and safety.
We also then delved into the idea of risk assessments and risk assessed different rooms. Acting in term 3 resumed with the great man himself, Michael Grady Hall. And we then went on to doing The Seagull by Chekhov. Very different to anything that I have ever read. I definitely feel like the character analysis that we did with our characters and reading the play a million times as a class helped immensely into, the thought process of the character and really understanding the task that we were about to undertake.
It was a very depressing play, but also hilarious too at moments. We all would then split up into different groups and we would all create different scenes from this play, highlight points throughout the play, which we then showed to a little mini audience of just second and third years. I wasn't completely proud of the stuff I had done, but I believe that what we had done as a class was quite impactful, and I do think we should have been proud for it.
For articulation, we then went on to learning received pronunciation, RP for short. And again, with this experience, it was a very varied experience for many people in the class. Some people coming from London and some people coming from elsewhere.
When we were doing these accents, we were then doing them with monologues. So our teacher, Morag Stark, the Scottish lady I mentioned earlier, she would then give us lots of different monologues which we could choose from. And I ended up doing one from a play called Great Expectations. I played a lawyer. He slags them off the entire way through and then just goes, "Welcome to law school." But it's in a received pronunciation way.
Moving on to voice, where we went on to doing political speeches. We were able to get a set text of political speeches that we could choose from, or again, like with the poems, we could write our own.
So I ended up doing a speech from Idris Elba, which was about diversity in the world.
I wrote my own, and like Lewis's speech, it was about diversity and experience with racism.
Unlike the poems, it was a very, very different process because delivering a poem is very, very different to delivering a political speech. Political speeches, they're more to the point and you're more trying to send a message and deliver this story in the most impactful and meaningful way that you possibly can. And so this then meant that the techniques we would learn in class would try and replicate this for us. Unfortunately,
I was about to say.
yeah, we never actually got around to doing these. There was an unfortunate circumstance which occurred, and as a result, this meant that we could then not do the speeches, which was a shame because we had all worked really, really hard on them. But also it meant that we didn't have an assessment, which was kind of nice at the end of term because we were all quite stressed. This finally brings us to singing. This was the best singing term, I think, throughout the entire year. We were working towards doing our own solo performances in front of a whole audience in the theatre. And it was absolutely terrifying, but also so goddamn exciting.
And also, the experience from the support from the rest of the class was something that was unmatched. I feel like people who may have been nervous singers in the class, you would not be able to tell because we all had each other's backs, and that was literally the most beautiful thing that I've ever seen.
Watching some people go from like not even being able to stand up and sing at all to then going up onto a stage in a theatre, singing to a whole group of like 100 and however many people was absolutely, it was just brilliant. It was so cool. I ended up singing Stars from Les Mis.
And I continued with Watch What Happens from Newsies the Musical.
I'm going to show a clip from my song here.
Out in the darkness, falling from God, falling from grace.
And we will share a recording from my song here.
But all I know is nothing happens if you just give in. It can't be any worse than how it's been. And it just so happens that we just might win. So whatever happens.
I was very, very proud of what we were able to achieve here. Singing is something I've always loved. I've always wanted to go into musical theatre at some point, and this was the closest I think I've gotten to be able to live out that dream.
Again, with Kieran, working with Kieran was absolutely amazing. You know, he would do these one-to-ones, and he would then kind of give us exercises to kind of push our kind of vocal range and vocal ability. You know, I'm an alto, and I had to get my song down a couple semitones. You know, when I gave him the sheet music, he looked at me and he was like, "Really? F sharp major?" And I was like, "Yeah, you know, I don't think I could sing it any higher." Then he was like, "Just wait a second, you know? Let me just transpose it into the original key." I ended up singing it without realizing that I could actually sing it, but I wouldn't have been able to do it without the progress from his lessons. So
If you're coming into drama school being like, "Oh my god, I did not have a clue that I was going to be singing, like I'm here to act, this is so terrifying, what the hell do you mean?" Don't worry, everyone here is in the exact same boat. Nobody here has come here to learn to sing. If they did, then you know they'd have made a big mistake, because you only get like 2 hours of it a week, and that's not something you want if you want to be a professional singer. This is about communicating a story through your voice, and if you can do it successfully, then you can achieve anything, really. Which brings us to our final combat assessment of first year. Broadsword and Quarterstaff. For Broadsword, we had to pick a scene from anything we wanted, and for Quarterstaff, we actually had to do choreography to a piece of music without dialogue. For my Broadsword scene, I did a scene from The Rings of Power with Florian, and for Quarterstaff, I did a sort of Guardians of the Galaxy inspired Come and Get Your Love rendition.
for Broadsword, I did a scene from Game of Thrones with Anya, and for Quarterstaff, I was with Florian, and we did a scene that we made up from Kung Fu Panda.
Their one was actually one of my favourites. The Kung Fu Panda one, and also a scene that Amy and Eva did from Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
Like, those two were my absolute favourites in the entire thing. I was very proud and very happy of how my Broadsword went. I wasn't necessarily too pleased with how Quarterstaff went. It was a bit of a tough process. Broadsword I was very, very happy with. It was a very short scene. The scene was 3.5 minutes long. So the combat was very quick and to the point, and so was the dialogue, but it made for a sweet, concise scene that I thought was quite epic. And at the end we had some really nice moments between me and Florian where I hit him in the head with the pommel of the sword, and I lift him up with the sword. I spat on him by mistake, but it was okay because it looked good in the video, you know what I'm saying?
And I was very happy with my Quarterstaff with Florian. Florian's just like the main...
Florian's the main pinpoint between us two. He
literally.
keeps us together.
The music was sick, it was so fun, and I was actually able to incorporate some of my previous gymnastic skills into this performance, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to do the course in the first place. You know, I wanted to find a way that I could combine gymnastics and acting together, and what other way than acting and fight performance. I played Tigress, he played Poe. In 26-degree June, we were wearing onesies doing combat.
In terms of progress that I made between the first combat assessment and the second combat assessment, those results were like monumental. So my marks during the first assessment were not low by any means, but they were on the lower end of the spectrum of what I wanted. With this second assessment, they had gone up like tenfold. I was so pleased with how my marks had increased over the past like 2-3 months, and it was my mission from that point onwards to just keep getting higher and higher marks as often as I could.
And for me, I felt a drastic change in my confidence in approaching these assessments. I mean, our very first assessments in first year, I felt very nervous, but I feel like I was then able to kind of feel and sense relaxation towards it, and just a kind of like enjoyment pinpoint where I could just enjoy myself. You know, we've done all the hard work and we can just literally put on a performance for everybody else to enjoy.
This brings us now to the final 2 weeks of term, where we had a 2-week intense priority of immersive theatre, which was with a dude called Michael. Not the same Michael as before, but a different Michael. And this guy was absolute nonsense. He was brilliant, an absolute brilliant guy with an amazing mustache. If you don't know what immersive theatre is, it is basically where you bring the audience into the world of the characters and they exist within that exact same world. You can interact with the characters and maybe sometimes they can even affect the outcome of the story. Not always, but they always have a say in the outcome of the story. This first week on Immersive basically was just us trying to understand the dude we were working with, and we played lots and lots of games and lots of different games that would then help us with immersive theatre later on, which then brought us into our second week where we were split off into lots of different groups and we all had to create our own 10-minute immersive production. I was in a group with Amy, Kyle and George, and we created a whole Star Trek inspired piece set on a spaceship, which was so cool. It's one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life and I absolutely loved it. We called it Meat Trek because we were on the hunt for meat in space. It was so much fun. I had a great time doing it. We had like light projections everywhere of stars. We had a board at the front with like space and different planets. We were able to build the whole bridge of the ship. It was fun and I was so proud. I finally got to live out my dream of being a space captain.
I was with Ethan, Lara and Jaden, and we did an interactive piece based off of our stimulus that we got, which was based off of the story of the Lady and the Tiger. For a lot of us, we have never done immersive theatre before.
None of us.
Again, like Commedia, it really throws you into the deep end from the get-go. If you're confident, you get pushed so far.
But the lucky thing is I think that it's a more, just because of the nature of immersive theatre, it felt like a safer space to fail than Commedia did. Not necessarily because of the teachers we had, but more just because I think it allowed you to fail more. And because all of us had never done it before, we were all in the same boat of trying to figure out what we could do and also what we couldn't do. I really do wish we could do it again because it was one of my favourite parts of the entirety of second year. Like, it really did teach me some new things. Really taught me how to work quickly and under pressure, like devising a 10-minute show. It was fun. It was hard, but rewarding.
It definitely helps with improvisational skills. A lot of it would then be based off of what the audience gave to us.
Because when the audience can say absolutely anything they want to you, that's where it can sometimes get a little bit scary, because you could have all of this stuff planned on what you want to achieve and do, but then someone will come up to you and be like, so what do you think of this thing? And then you're like, fuck, I didn't think about that at all. And in the moment, just be like, well, here's what I think. And it can be hard, but once you have a knack for it, there's nothing you can't do. Let's give ourselves a round of applause. That has been an absolute tough trek. We have finally reviewed first year of acting and fight performance at East 15 Acting School. So that is pretty much the entire video. I will say, if you are wanting to apply to this course, or if you are going to be starting this course in the next couple of months, here's what we have to say to you.
There is always a lot to learn, regardless of whatever background you come from, you know, gymnastics or a martial background or a dancing background or anything. There is always so much to learn. So it's amazing to bring those skills to the class, but don't forget that you're here to learn as well as everybody else. You may have not done those things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just because you might be, for example, an elite gymnast like Mariah here, doesn't mean, you know, that lessens the value of anyone in the class who isn't that. That doesn't make you better than them. It just means that you have a set of skills that they don't, because those people are going to have sets of skills that you don't
have.
Exactly. And all it's about is coming together, putting those skills together
as an ensemble
to create something that you are all really proud of. Also, throw yourself into every opportunity that you possibly can. You know, there are going to be lots of different opportunities for you on the course, but also outside of the course, in the real world, and also on other courses here. There might be moments where people in other courses are looking for somebody to help them. You can potentially do that. You also might want to create some of your own art outside of the classroom, and that is something that I think is an absolutely amazing idea. If you've been watching my channel for some time, you know that that's what I do, and I like to do it as much as I possibly can. And I think that if that is something you are interested in, don't give that up just because you're on a course doing other stuff. You still want to do the stuff that you love outside of it as well, and don't lose that, because that can definitely help you on the course. Be nice to people. Be nice to people, they'll be nice to you, you'll have a good time.
work together. Together.
Together!
Against each other, together.
So thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you, Mariah, for
So welcome.
joining us on this journey today. I will be making my second year review video very, very soon. Mariah might be in this. I might have some other people. Who knows? Who knows? We shall let you know very, very soon. Once again, my name is Lewis Turner, and I shall see you on the other side. Great.
It's a wrap. Let's see if nice out.
Oh, God. That was fucking long.